Hello everyone. First of all, I just want to thank you for all the support you have shown me in the previous videos, and if you're enjoying these videos and you're finding it useful, then I highly recommend enrolling into my Tailwind CSS course. So far we have over 15,000 students and we're getting good reviews about this course. So I highly recommend checking it out if you want to learn Tailwind CSS in detail. So if you want to enroll into this course, you can find the link in the description. Okay, so before we do the projects in this course, we want to go through the different sections for Tailwind CSS. So in this video, we're going to be discussing the background sections for the classes in Tailwind CSS. So let's go ahead and start with the background color section. Now, there's many different colors you can use. So to use the background class, you just have to write BG and then followed by the color that you want. For example, BG black will give us the black color, BG white will give us the white color. And also, if you want to have a shade of that color, you can use the -50, -100, -200. And you can do BG transparent as well to make it transparent. So again, it's very easy to use the colors with the backgrounds. All you have to do is just BG to indicate it's a background color, and then put in the color that you want, and then the shade as well if you want it. So the higher the number, the darker the shade. Okay, so now let's move on to using it. So as you can see over here, we have BG green. We can change it to BG blue, for example, and then it will make it into a blue button. Now let's go down and let's talk about the opacity. So it's very simple again. You just have to use BG opacity, and the higher the opacity, the basically darker it is, and the less the opacity, the more transparent it is. It's very self-explanatory. And let's go down now. We have the responsivity for Tailwind. All we have to do is use the different, like for example, if we want to use a specific color for medium devices, we just have to write MD and then we write the color that we want. For large devices, LG. For small devices, SM. Okay, so on and so forth. Now we have the hover effect. To use the hover, all we have to do is just have a hover in front of the color that we want, and then when we hover over it, then the color will change to what we want it to. For example, over here we're using 700, so the shade of red will be higher, so it will be darker. And let's go on the focus now. So when we click on this, it will become more white. As you can see, the background color is grey with a shade of 200, and when we click on it, it will become white. So background opacity is very simple as well. You just put in the BG, which is background, and then you put in the opacity, and then the number of the opacity. The higher it is, the more opaque it is, and then the less it is, the more transparent it is. Self-explanatory. Now let's move on to background origin. So to have this nice effect, just like a postal stamp, it has that cool effect around it to give it that origin and that authenticity. You can use background origin border, and then or you could use background origin padding as well to give it more padding, as you can see in number 2. And if you want to give it some, if you want to make it, if you use content, then it will show up just like it shows in number 3. And also, let's go down now. So that's basically, we're not going to really use that, but just it's worthwhile covering it. Now, background position. So it's very simple. I mean, it's very common sense. As you can see, if you go down on the usage section, we can see if you do BG left top, it will stick the background to the left and to the top. If you just do BG top, it will stick it to the top. BG right top, it will stick it to the top right corner, so on and so forth. So now let's go on the background repeat. So with background repeat, you can have a background that basically keeps on repeating until it fills the entire screen, or you can have no repeat, which basically just does it once, just shows the background once, as you can see over here. You can have repeat horizontally as well, so that it's just repeated horizontally. Again, it's very simple stuff. You can just go on the Tailwind documentation, and anything you want to use, you want to go into detail, you can just go and see it over here. You have repeat vertically, again, just vertical repeat. So you just do BG repeat Y, and that will repeat it vertically. Okay, now let's move on to background size. So with background size, okay, so background size is quite self-explanatory as well. Auto, what it does, it basically shows it automatically to its default size. So whatever the image size is going to show it as it is. We have cover. Now if you use BG cover, what it will do, it will basically cover the entire area, that's the entire div that it's in, so that's basically there's no white spaces. If we go down now, we have contain will basically make the image as large as it can be without modifying the aspect ratio, and also without cropping it. We have responsive as well, so responsive will basically make it responsive. And so now let's go on background image. So with background image, we can use BG none to make the background image none, so there's no background image. And we can use the different classes, as you can see over here. We can have gradients, so it implements the gradients from bottom to top. We have to top right, so basically it makes the gradient to top right, from bottom to top right, and so on and so forth, just like as it states in there. We have linear gradients as well, so it gives an element, a linear gradient background, so you can use like the direction that you want it to go in, just like I explained, and then you can put in the colors that you want. So for example, from yellow 400 to via red 500, to so basically you put in the colors and then it will do the gradient for you. So then we have gradient color stops. So again, just like I explained, but the color stops are basically, you can have a starting color, and it goes from basically a starting color to a white, and we can have from one color to a color, so from one starting color to an ending color, and we can also have three colors, so from one color to another color to another color. So it basically supports from 1 to 3 colors. It basically summarizes the background classes for this video. Again, I might have skipped a few classes because some of them were unnecessary, and you don't really need to use them, only in specific circumstances. So that should give you a good understanding of background colors, which we will be using in our projects. Alright guys, so now that we have discussed the background classes group, let's go ahead and actually implement some of these classes to see how they look in action. Okay, first of all, let's make a new div and let's give it a background color. So we'll give it a background color of blue with a shade of 300, and let's make the height of it the height of the screen. As you can see, we have this background color. Now let's increase the shade to make it darker. As you can see, it has become darker. If we want to make it a certain color for, like, for example, large devices, we can do that using LG and then semicolon, basically with what we want. Sorry, not semicolon, colon, and then we can put in the color that we want. For example, BG red 600. So now, if the width becomes a large device, then the background color will change to red. Now let's also do the opacity. So for example, let's do the opacity for large devices. So we can have when the device is large, we can do BG opacity 50, and then that should basically make it more transparent. As you can see, the red now is more transparent. And now let's talk about the hover effect. If we want to hover over this, we can make it a certain color as well. Like for example, hover, we'll do BG green, and then we'll do like 300. So now whenever I hover over the div, it becomes green. Now let's also cover the background image. That's another important thing that we're going to be using in our projects. Again, here I'm trying to cover the most important stuff because there's thousands of stuff in Tailwind CSS, and there's a lot of unnecessary things. So I'm mainly gonna cover the foundation stuff. If you want to get into the details, you can always go on the Tailwind CSS website, and you can basically find anything you want there. So now let's have a new div, and let's give it a background image using style, for example. So we'll do background image, we'll find the URL. So let's find just a Tailwind logo, a nice Tailwind image. Okay, let's take this one for example. And now let's style it up. So we'll give it some classes. We'll use minimum height of the screen. Actually, no, let's remove that. We don't need to do that. Let's just remove that for now. We'll use BG no repeats, BG left top. So no repeat will stop the image from repeating, and bg left top will basically align it all the way to the top left. And also let's give this a height, let's give this div a height of the screen, so it will be basically, it will take up the full height of the screen. And as you can see right here, if we make it bigger, if we make this panel bigger, so you can see that it's stuck to the top left. If we change it to top, so instead of left top, we're going to do just bg top. That should basically center it and make it top, stuck to the top. If we do bottom, it was right bottom, left bottom, is basically gonna go into that position. Let's also talk about the background size. So there's a few sizing classes that we can use to change the background image, the size of it. First of all, let's change the image, because we want something that you can, like something with a background. Yeah, that one looks perfect because it has a good background, so we can see how much it's basically covering in the div. So let's change this image. And now if we use bg no repeat, bg for example bg cover, that should basically cover the entire screen with the image. So bg cover, as you can see now, the whole image, the whole div is covered with the image. If we do bg contain, then it would not crop out the image, so it basically would try and get the entire image inside this div. And if we do bg auto, then it would actually get the actual dimensions of that image, and it would display it inside the div. Okay, so as you can see, the reason why it became so big, because that is the dimensions of this image. So for the gradient colors, there's actually 3 type of classes that we can use. So you can have just a starting color that would eventually become transparent. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's have a div and let's give it a color. So let's actually give it a gradient of bg gradient to R, so it goes to the right. And we'll start the gradient from, for example, blue with a shade of 500, and we're just going to leave it. So as you can see, it becomes from blue to transparent. And so now let's do the other one, where we can have from color to another color. So we can have another color basically, which is to, for example, purple. Or let's change the color. Let's do from green 400 to blue 600. From green 400 to blue 600. As you can see, now we have a gradient for using 2 colors. And if we want to have 3 colors, we can also do that using a middle color. So we can also put a middle color inside it, which is in this case going to be blue, and we can do via gray. So as you can see, now you have actually, let's just do red. So now you have green, blue and red gradients. Okay, so that covers that basically covers our gradients. So if we want to change the direction of the gradient, we can do that from the class. So we have bg gradient to R, in this case is going basically to the right, so from left to right. If we do to tr, so top right, that's going to make the direction from basically the direction will be to the top right. If we do, for example, tb, it's going to be if we do br, it's going to be bottom right. So it depends on the direction you want to. You can basically choose the direction of the gradient, and it will basically implement this direction for you. So that pretty much covers this practical aspect of the background group classes. I mean, I didn't cover everything that we have done in the theory. Mainly, I think I only missed out the background origin, because basically we're just trying to cover the most important stuff that we're actually going to be using, and the stuff that are actually practical. So if you want to go into detail, you can always go to Tailwind CSS and you can try these classes for yourself.